Well, Shabbat Shalom. We just want to welcome everyone to the Sabbath Day conference call. This is Barbara. I'm serving as your host today, and Brother Pete is your co-host. We just want to welcome all our family and friends that have gathered here today by phone or internet, or maybe you are listening to the YouTube recording. We welcome you, and we invite you to go to our website, lunarsabbathday.com. It's a great source of information about the Creator Sabbath. And also there are a bunch of rebuttals there about the Creator Sabbath that will answer a lot of your questions. So today's topic is Feastkeeper Objections to the Lunar Sabbath. And this is going to be part 1. And you will hear the Lunar Sabbath defense. At the heart of where we stand regarding this doctrine is determining what truly constitutes a scriptural fact and what is merely a surmising or a theory which requires one believe a series of possibilities rather than real facts. What constitutes proof? I have found that there are different levels of what constitutes proof in the mind of people. Some require just a little bit of evidence to support a doctrine or belief, and others require a lot of evidence to support a doctrine or belief. And we need to be careful that we are relying on real evidence to support our belief rather than an interpretation of evidence. So what is the meaning of conclusive proof in court? Yeah, go ahead, Brother Pete, and read this that's in the green. Go ahead. Thank you.
Certainly. Conclusive proof, this is taken from the Evidence Act of 1872 of British India. Conclusive proof is when one fact is declared by this act to be conclusive proof of another. The court shall on proof of the one fact regard the other as proved and shall not allow evidence to be given for the purpose of disproving it.
Presumption, conclusive proof. The phrase conclusive proof is a subjective term, meaning that folks have all the evidence they need to accept and understand a certain belief. And so this presentation will give the arguments from a feast keeper against the lunar Sabbath in purple lettering, and also the defense of the lunar Sabbath will be in green lettering. And Brother Pete will be reading the defense, or the feast keeper, Brother Pete will be reading the feast keeper's objections to the lunar Sabbath, and I'll be reading the lunar Sabbath defense. So in this article, I will stand upon the 6 different ways of determining truth listed above, and it is for you to consider the matter and determine who has scriptural evidence and who relies upon the writings of men. And here are the 6 ways of proving. And I'll have you go ahead and read these scriptures yourself. I've looked them all over, and they all show the point. Number 1, find a single text that says, "Thus saith Jehovah." It is truth, and I must obey his command whether there are 2 or 3 witnesses or not. Number 2, another way, find 2 or 3 witnesses, text saying the same thing. Then it is absolute truth that I must admit and comply with it. 3, find a chain of text where there is an unfolding of truth, one expounding upon the other. It is truth, and that I'm responsible for. 4, if it agrees with Torah and the prophets, neither adding nor subtracting anything, it is a straight truth. And 5, a lack of all the above means that the thing is not true. If there is no truth, thus saith Jehovah, no 2 or 3 witnesses, no chain of textual evidence, and no support found in the Torah and the prophets, then it is false. It is then my privilege to admit it and tell others that it has no foundation of truth. Any historical evidence that agrees with Scripture is acceptable, as supportive evidence to the truth. Any historical record that disagrees with the evidence presented in Scripture is a lie of the highest order of magnitude. So where in Scripture does it say that Saturday is the Sabbath? And where in Scripture does it say that the Sabbath is every seventh day in an unbroken cycle of 7-day weeks since creation? If Feastkeeper can answer these two questions from Scripture, this issue will go away. But if they can't, they will see there is no conclusive proof for Saturday Sabbath. Saturday Sabbath on the Gregorian calendar is supported only by the writings of men, and there is no proof in Scripture. An honest application of these 6 proofs renders Saturday Sabbath defenseless. The proof is right here.
Feastkeeper, what is the lunar Sabbath? Beware of the lunar Sabbath. What is a lunar Sabbath? The lunar Sabbath ignores the current weekly 7-day cycle in use today and uses the moon to determine when a new week begins and ends. So rather than observing the Sabbath on the 7th day of a recurring, uninterrupted 7-day week, lunar Sabbatarians restart a weekly 7-day cycle near the beginning of each lunar month. A lunar month follows the phases of the moon rather than the 30 to 31-day calendar in use today.
And interjected in the middle of that paragraph is, and where are the instructions to observe the Sabbath or week in this manner found in Scriptures? And that's referring to the uninterrupted 7-day week. Before Feastkeeper has even offered proof of his version of the week, he is demanding that everyone observe the week in the same manner as he. Feastkeeper observes the new moon and follows the lunar months for the annual feast, as opposed to the Gregorian months, as revealed in Torah, but observes the weekly Sabbath according to the pagan, papal 7-day planetary week, which is not commanded in Torah. And this makes sense. That's a question. Is this consistent with Yah's other instructions? Part his way and part man's way? And I will tell you that I am a feast keeper, and lunar Sabbath keepers keep the feast and keep the Sabbath on the feast calendar all year long.
Yahweh's annual feasts are indeed determined by certain days of certain lunar months. Starting from the crescent phase of the moon, Yahweh's Passover is on the 14th day of the first month of each year. But lunar Sabbath keepers believe that the regular Sabbath falls on certain days of each month. They choose to keep the regular Sabbath on the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and 29th day of the lunar month.
And that's not our choice. The only weekly Sabbaths that can be date identified in Scriptures fall on these days.
A few do it on the 7th, 14th, 21st, and 28th days of each lunar month. But for the sake of simplicity, we will address those that keep it on the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th. Here is an illustration to help clarify. And shown is the Creator's calendar.
Well, I have to give it to Feastkeeper credit for presenting a layout of the creation calendar in an accurate fashion. But again, my friend presents his position as a standard without the benefit of scriptural evidence. Scripture does not say that the months begin with the first crescent. The Babylonian rabbis adopted this tradition while in Babylon, and it was not practiced until this way in ancient Israel. But it was a custom some of them adopted after their Babylonian exile. And here are some quotes about that. The Babylonian calendar was a lunar solar calendar with years consisting of 12 lunar months. Each beginning with a new crescent moon was first sighted low in the western horizon at sunset, plus an intercalary month inserted as needed by decree. And the calendar is based on a Sumerian predecessor preserved in Umma calendar of Shugai. And all these links will be left below. So the beginning of the month in the Babylonian calendar was determined by the direct observation by the priest of the young crescent moon at sunset after the astronomical new moon. The other link leads you to this quote. The Babylonian calendar was a lunar solar calendar. The Babylonian day began at sunset, and each month began with the first rising of the crescent moon. In essence, a Babylonian month was a synodic lunar month, represented as a 29 or 30-day month. Contemporary records show that the start of the month was actually determined by observation of the new moon wherever possible, or by prediction if not. So the month began at the first visibility of the new moon, and in the 8th century BC, court astronomers still reported this important observation to the Assyrian kings. Thus, the Babylonian calendar, until the end, preserved a vestige of the original bipartition of the natural year into 2 seasons, just as the Babylonian months to the end remained truly lunar and began with the new moon was first visible in the evening, and their day began at sunset. The Jewish adoption of the Babylonian calendar custom dates from the period of Babylonian exile in the 6th century BC. So they did adopt the Babylonian ways. So some might be tempted to say, see, but they would be wrong. These websites accurately record the events as history reveals them. It was the Babylonian rabbis who adapted the Babylonian calendar, including the days beginning at sunset, the months beginning with the first visible crescent, and the pagan names of the days and months. The Zionist Jews are not Israelites, they are Khazars, which is Edomites, Esau's descendants. The days and months in Scripture are by ordinal numbers. The Israelites certainly apostatized and fell into the same or similar calendar corruption as the Jews, but there the similarities cease. So I'm just leaving this link here that Scripture says the day begins at dawn, and you can look that up for yourself. This is one of the YouTubes that we did.
Peacekeeper. Because the lunar Sabbath ignores the current weekly cycle in use today, their Sabbath may fall on any day of our modern week. It depends completely and solely on the moon phases. One major problem that the lunar Sabbath keepers face is the fact that there are extra days in the month which prevent them from being able to keep the Sabbath every 7th day.
Well, I agree that this is true, but I simply must again ask, where does Scripture say that the Sabbath is every 7 days in an unbroken cycle? You can look high, you can look low, but Scripture describes the Sabbath as the 7th day of the week, period. Never does it say every 7 days. The issue at hand here is what week was Scripture in reference to when regarding the week? The pagan 7-day planetary week, or the one established at creation?
Peacekeeper. The moon moves through one complete cycle: new moon, first quarter, full moon, last quarter, and conjunction, in approximately 29.5 days. See the graphic to the left. Since we cannot split a day in half, this means that some lunar months will last 29 days, but other lunar months will last 30 days. So what do lunar Sabbath keepers do on the 1st and 30th days of each month?
Well, the answer to this question is elementary. We call them new moon days and put them in the calendar just as Feastkeeper arranged them at the left. That's the one that he drew up. So they are days not counted in the work week. New moon days are not work week days.
Feastkeeper. This is where some may differ. While everyone calls them new moon days, some keep them as extensions of the Sabbath day on the 29th.
Well, we're all learning, and not everyone is at the same place in their experience. And when they get around to studying this out, they will learn that only the 7th new moon is on par with the weekly Sabbath.
Continuing. This presents a problem, though, because there are scriptures which show men building, in Exodus 40, and traveling, Exodus 27 and 9, on the new moon day.
Agreed.
Also, it is not commanded anywhere that we must rest on any new moon day except the new moon day of the 7th month.
Okay, a conditional agreement here. In the future, we will worship on new moon days, Isaiah 66:23. So I'm going to assume that new moon days were days of set-apart convocation, worship days, but not necessarily rest days.
The new moon on the 7th month is the Feast of Trumpets. This new moon would be what Scripture alludes to in Amos 8:5, when some couldn't sell their grain on the new moon day.
And I agree with that. The new moon days never fall during the common week. They are a third category of day. Ezekiel 46:1 says that the gates to the temple is shut on all the 6 working days, but open on the Sabbath and new moon. If the new moon was on a Wednesday and the tabernacle was still here, and I ask you, would the gate have been open or shut? How would you answer? If you say it must be open because it is new moon day, I would respond, but Wednesday is a work day, it must be shut. If you agree, of course Wednesday is a work day, but it must be shut, I'd reply, but friend, it is new moon and it must be open. You have no correct answer because you are applying a pagan, papal, Roman, solar-only, man-made calendar to this scriptural calendar event. Isaiah 66:23, 2 Kings 4:18-23, and Amos 8:5 are 3 more witnesses that prove the new moon days cannot fall on one of the 6 work days. New moon, work day, Sabbath look like this in the calendar to the left. And you see a new moon day is day 1, and then there are your 6 working days, and then a 7th-day Sabbath.
Others only refrain from commerce or employment on those days, but are free to do other manner of work, such as mowing the lawn, gardening, digging ditches, building houses, traveling, and doing housework. What this would essentially mean is they don't truly get a day of rest every 7 days. They would have to wait up to 9 days to get a day of rest. For instance, if they kept the Sabbath on the 29th of the month, they would be permitted to do various kinds of work on the 30th day of that month, and the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th days of the following month. Now that 7th, of course, is the last work day. This means that a person would potentially work 8 days rather than the 6 that Yahweh commanded, and rest on the 9th day instead of the 7th day that Yahweh commanded. With either method, Yahweh's command to work 6 days and to rest on the 7th is ignored at the end of every month.
Well, whether they refrain from commerce is irrelevant. The point is that nearly all lunar calendars observers recognize the new moon as a 3rd category of day, just as revealed in Scripture, and Feastkeeper does not. His position is that because we don't see it his way, we must be in error. The other point is, where does it say that we are to rest every 7 days? Every 7th day in succession, anyways. Where does it say that in Scripture? Scripture says only that we are to rest on the 7th day of the week. This is exactly what lunar Sabbatarians do. We still recognize 6 common work days and then rest on the 7th day of the week. Doing yard work, cleaning out the garage, or washing the windows is necessary work, and it's not nearly as emotionally draining or demanding as a regular 9-to-5 job that pays the bills and supports the family. There's no boss to answer to, no clock to punch, no level of production demanded. Whether Feastkeeper recognizes new moon as a 3rd category of day or not is irrelevant. The simple fact is that in Scripture, the new moon days are not numbered in the work week. It is not that difficult to read Ezekiel 46:1, where it says that the gate will be shut the 6 working days, but open on the Sabbath and new moon days. So just do the math. New moon days cannot and will never fall on any of the 6 working days. So there's a chart up here. One type of day is your working day. And over here shows a sample of the calendar. You have 6 working days. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the 7th is a Sabbath. And the gate is open on new moon and on the Sabbath. Closed on the work days. So next week will be part 2, when the Feastkeeper asks, does the Moedim, appointed times in Scripture, prove lunar Sabbaths? So I hope you'll be back. And I just wanted to say we did the rebuttals to this whole article already. If you want to skip ahead and go ahead and watch these YouTubes, we did parts 1 through 4 addressing this same document. So to access more information about today's topic, there are rebuttals there. There's questions and answers in defense of the lunar Sabbath that maybe you're asking or maybe your friends are asking. So please go to the website for more information, lunarsabbathday.com. And so thank you for being here today, and I hope you'll be here next week for a continuation on this topic.